Hey everybody, my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records, episode number 72. And today, we are talking about a band, a project that just put out its first album. This is now the second modern band that I've spoken about on this channel. No physical copies yet, but we'll be getting into that shortly. But today we're going to be talking about DuPage and their new album, Right Outside the City. So I'm very excited to talk about this, and it'll be, I think, interesting to talk about the contrasting timelines of this band's or projects. It's a band. I hate saying project. The existence of it. So I think this will be fun to get into. So there's a lot to get into. So you know how it is here at Rich Talks Records. You know how these things go. The album came out. It was released on May 5th of this year. It is currently available on all of the usual suspects as far as streaming sites go. I barely use those. If I listen to music on the internet, I basically just use YouTube. So I'll link to that. I'll link to the Spotify. But DuPage also, this is actually technically the second DuPage release, because the first DuPage release was on December 31st. I hope I'm getting this date right. It's what's up on Apple Music. December 31st of 2021 is when the first EP came out. So, interestingly, the other band, the other modern band I talked about, you remember these guys, the Orchids, yes, where this is two conjoined EPs plus one song. The first DuPage album is essentially the first EP plus 5 newer songs, and I'm going to be explaining all of that and having that all make sense. As I have been doing recently in some of my videos, I have been citing my sources. And outside of what I was able to find in terms of like release dates and like publishing information and things like that are out there on the internet, my main source for this was one half of DuPage, the great Mario Cuomo, who was gracious enough. So I interviewed Mario last year for an interview series that I'm doing that is on again, off again, mostly off again, but it will be going on later this year, trust me, known as Creative Perspectives, which was off the internet for a little bit thanks to Facebook zapping its, changing its video storage policy and zapping videos, but you can now currently see it on the channel that's taking YouTube by storm, Arc Plus, and you bet I'll be linking to that. Yes, of course. So if you want to, go hit the old subscribe button over there on Arc Plus. There's lots of fun stuff over there. It's everything you love about Arc Technologies plus more. But I interviewed Mario last year, and that went really well, and that was a lot of fun. But a few days ago, he was gracious enough and generous enough with his time to sit for an hour and 45 minutes with me, and I was able to fire away as many questions as I possibly could. So my source for my main source for this video is the ultimate source, the best source possible, the artist, which I love. If I could do that for every video, I would. But I don't know that I could get in touch with Iggy Pop. So that would be pretty cool. So anyway, I think if I interviewed Iggy Pop, my head would explode. But DuPage began as a COVID era side project with Mario Cuomo. I'm going to butcher this. I will only say the full name once, and then I will just use the abbreviated version that Mario uses. Sigurdur Burkus, who did a lot, who not only was the drummer, but handled a lot of the production. And then, of course, from the band The Plain White Tees, Dave Trio on guitars, and a band that I am basically unfamiliar with. I only know the one big hit, though they were a college-era favorite of my wife's. And recently, when we were coming back from breakfast or something, I don't remember where we were driving to or from, but there was a Plain White T's song that came up on the radio, and my wife knew every word. So she keeps saying, like, "Oh, you're going to have to check out more of their stuff." So anyway, but I know absolutely nothing about them. Anyway, they were a COVID era band. I think this sort of falls in between the original breakup of the Orwells and then the reformation of the Orwells. I'm pretty sure. Mario has been very patient in answering my questions about timeline and chronology, but I'll be honest, he released so much music that I'm still a little foggy on what came from what sometimes, and I'll be getting into that as well. But the original EP was recorded, so Siggy, as he shall henceforth be known from now on in this video, so I don't keep butchering poor guy's name. I hate doing that. I really hate butchering people's names. I think it's I feel like it's very disrespectful. I don't like doing that. It's always been, it's a weird thing with me. So I like calling people what they want to be, what they want to be called and should be called. So anyway, but they were a COVID era band, and I think that the Orwells getting together was already, from the sense that I got, was already in the offing. And so Siggy does production. He had a functioning room at the Music Garage in Chicago, and then decided during COVID, why keep paying for this, and just moved the studio into his house, which, if you're familiar, I don't do specifics, of course, but borders York High School. So that is where everything was recorded and mixed, and then that butted up against what I imagine is going to be the final Orwells album, this album, Friendly Fire, which came out in 2023 and I got last year. It was released via the Sonic Muse, who also is the label that handles the Orchids. Wow, what a coincidence. So another Elmhurst phenomenon. Isn't it amazing that these things can come from one town? I'm just fascinated by that. I love it. So the band put out the EP. Then that went straight into the making of Friendly Fire, and which was recorded at the same place. I wanted to make up a name for the studio. I was gonna just be very Sub Pop about it and invent a name for it, but then I was like, I don't know I don't know if I should do that or not. And then Mario departs and goes out to LA for a while. The solo music starts dropping hard and fast. The solo music is of exceptional quality. You could, if you want to watch the interview I did last year, we cover a lot of that. I'm a really, really big fan of a lot of it, especially his second solo album, which I think came out in 2022, called Middle American. It's the one that really, really cemented my fandom. And then I've just liked everything since, basically. About a year after the initial 5-song EP came out, the band did release one more song. So in 2022, it came out, at least on Mario's YouTube channel, the song Zoomers was released. So according to Mario, when I talked to him, the concept, one of the original concepts of DuPage was that it was going to be 2 separate EPs, and it was going to be these 2 different batches of songs. And basically they just never finished the second batch. And, I think that, Mario, untethered from record contracts and obligations, really just, and this is something that I think is really cool about him, he just goes with what he's the most excited about. And kind of artistically, again, I really appreciate this, artistically very much just operates from instinct. And I think that he is, from what I gather, somebody who very, very much appreciates just the creative freedom to go in whatever direction he sees fit at the time. The original story of DuPage, then, is very, very brief. I found one interview that they did, I think in 2021, and I forget what country it's from, but I had to do a Google Translate on the page. And I actually went back and tried to find the interview for the purposes of this video and couldn't find it again. Then we jump forward to 2024, 2025. And Mario has now released the End Times album, which is great. The Middle American album, which is epic and incredible. And then The Party, which maybe doesn't have as much cohesion as the Middle American album. However, on a song-by-song basis, it is an absolute knockout. The Party is another fantastic record in a completely different way than Middle American as an album. And Mario goes to Nashville and records his song, The Epical Leftovers, with a fantastic video directed by J. Curtis Miller. I will be linking to this. But interestingly, The Leftovers winds up having guitars and being co-produced by Kyle Cook from, interestingly, Matchbox 20. So, and I'll be honest, a band that I have never listened to in my entire life, and I'm being perfectly honest, had no interest in whatsoever. So, but you know, there's the making of Leftovers is really, really interesting, and this guy came through big time and does a great job. This is an amazing single, and the guitars are great. The song is absolutely fantastic. And one of the things I will briefly touch upon is one of the things that I really love about Mario is he's very earnest, but he is remarkably unpretentious. He's unpretentious in the same way that the Van Halen brothers are unpretentious, and it's one of my favorite things. There's absolutely no nonsense. And in his interview with American Vulgaria, which I would strongly suggest everybody check out, not just that interview, but that just as a publication is awesome, the song Leftovers, which covers a lot of ground thematically and is actually a pretty dense story, or a pretty dense narrative once you start parsing it out. And I'll be talking about the phenomenon of that in Mario's lyrics as well. But it literally apparently began with him looking in his fridge one night and singing to himself, "Why don't you eat your leftovers?" I fucking love that. And from that acorn grew the mighty oak of this single. This single, I don't know what the availability of this is. This is obviously also available, or was, via the Sonic Muse. I have no idea if this is, I haven't looked at their web shop, so I'm actually not sure. But I feel like this song got a lot of interest going again in Mario's solo music, because up until this point, a lot of his solo music was very, very different than what he had done before. And this just being more sort of guitar oriented, but it's not the howling garage rock of what he had done. I mean, the Orwells covered a lot of ground, especially, by the time you get to Terrible Human Beings and the self-titled album. The self-titled album in particular, I think, is a really, really stunning piece of work. But this was just a straightforward, absolutely phenomenal rock and roll song that in another era would have been a straight-up-the-middle, no-brainer hit single. And it was interesting to see the response to this at the time, and people... Mario was on a few different podcasts, and just to see people who didn't really know his other work that well, their response to this, and the genuine appreciation for it. Now, the B side of this. So I feel like this was the very beginnings, and I asked Mario about this, how much of this was deliberately thought through. And what I appreciate is, again, the honesty of the answer. But I think that he was just following the muse, and I think the following the muse is what artists should do. I think it's kind of the most important thing, and just simply putting one foot in front of the other. And I think that there are umpteen examples, whether you're talking about from David Lynch to George Harrison, of people just putting one foot in front of the other, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a whole new creative space, a whole new creative world, because you're just kind of doing it on its sort of purest level. So the B side of this was a song that Mario put out, I want to say last year, I forget the exact release date, but this great song called Date Night, which when I first heard it, I thought in a perfect world, this is before this 45 had come out, and I thought in a perfect world, Date Night would be the B side to Leftovers. Like, how perfect would it be? So Date Night was recorded, and I am gonna make up a name for a studio here. The Sonic Muse Studios out in Chicagoland, we shall say, right outside, somewhere right outside the city. Ho ho ho! And the produced and with the guitars done by Orwell's guitar player and Mario's cousin, the great Dominic Corso, who himself has released some really strong solo music, which I would definitely recommend you checking out. But Date Night is just fantastic. The guitars on it are amazing. It is a great guitar song, and it has all of the satisfying post elements and tonalities that you want and need out of great rock and roll guitar playing. And it's a phenomenal song, great lyric, great melody. I mean, it delivers on every level. It is a beautiful, beautiful B-side, and a perfect sort of scrappier B-side to the more polished Leftovers. But that, in a way, I think subconsciously, indirectly, paves the way towards what DuPage Mark II, or what Mario is referring to as the second batch. But I'm going to say DuPage Mark II, because why not? The rebirth of and the rechristening of DuPage as a project, a band, but also a concept and an entire aesthetic. And yes, I will be getting into all of that, of course. Really seems to come out more towards the end of last year, and where Dom and DuPage was rechristened as effectively a duo with Mario and Dom, and recorded 5 new songs at the Sonic Muse Studios in Chicagoland, where they have also been doing some really, really cool live sessions. I think I linked to one of those because the Orchids did one where they did that absolutely amazing performance of Speechless, which I'm such a fan of. As far as the recordings from the original EP, those are all just basically ported over, except the one difference being that they have been completely remastered to fit in with the sonic identity of the rest of the newer recordings. On one hand, I think you can tell the difference, but given what it is, and given that it's roughly like a half decade apart, I do think that it is fairly seamless. And I think and I'll be talking about that, I think that from an aesthetic point of view, I think the songwriting really does match, and it really does make sense. And I personally have absolutely no problem doing mixing and matching like that, and having something of a patchwork quality. Some of my favorite Neil Young records are like that, and Bob Dylan did that. So Miles Davis did that. I mean, that don't wrinkle up my forehead. So when I asked Mario how things currently work with him and Dom, I loved the answer. is, and I thought this was really fantastic. He described it, and some of this crosses over into the entire DuPage concept and aesthetic itself, which I want to talk about because and I'm going to spend probably a lot of time on, because for something that doesn't have any pretension to it, I think it actually is really, really well thought out and actually has a lot of its own inherent logic, binding it all together kind of perfectly. But he simply described it as fun and low key. And I think fun is one of the operative words, and it's an operative word for myself at this point in my life. I'm all about, as Devo put it, time out for fun. I'm a big believer in that. So, but he described the writing process as they get together early in the morning and get 2 big-ass black coffees and work until they are starving and then order pizza. And I don't know... And then they'll finish things up, and then like Dom will do lay down more guitar parts the next day. I think that is perfect. I absolutely love that. And as he later described it when talking about the Disco Days music video, everybody goes home happy. And I think that's part of the DuPage aesthetic and part of the DuPage concept. I love that. And I love, again, the complete non-pretension of, there's a lot to be said of going home satisfied after a long day of good, honest, hard work. I'm a big believer in that. And that's how these boys are turning them out and knocking them out. I love that. So when he described the process, you hear it in the music. It all comes through. It almost doesn't need to be described, but it is kind of cool to have that confirmed. Mario recorded End Times and parts of Middle American, basically, is it GarageBand? I forget. Basically using an iPad, and then Dave Trio, they would develop things from there. Dave Trio, by the way, plays some really, really, really beautiful guitar parts on some of the Middle American stuff. I mean, really lovely, tasteful stuff that I'm a really big fan of, and adds a lot musically. But Mario's not like a Jello Biafra or a Jim Morrison before him. He doesn't he's not a self-contained songwriter in that he doesn't play guitar or piano. So he is one of these people who hears the songs in his head, creates melody. And I had when we spoke in 2025 that he tends to come up with melody first and then start fitting lyrics to those melodies. His abilities as a melody writer, as a melodic writer, are absolutely fantastic. We'll be talking a lot about that. This DuPage is heavy on the melodies, and melodies for days, ridiculous melodies, and then starts putting lyrics to those. And I can say Mario Cuomo has truly, over the last few years, become one of my favorite lyric writers. Like, I absolutely adore his lyrics. And again, the lack of pretension, and I feel like I'll be circling back around to this, the lack of pretension and the lack of any sort of faux intellectualization in the lyrics, but they're fantastic and they're very, very subtle, reminds me of, and it might tonally be very different, another one of my favorite lyricists, and a very underrated lyricist. And that, of course, is the great Diamond David Lee Roth, one of my all-time favorites. And in the same way that, in that great Jay Moore interview, when David Lee Roth, when Jay Moore points out the line in Hot for Teacher, little girl from Cherry Lawn. And he's like, you could have picked any town in California, but he's like, Cherry Lawn. Like, why did you pick Cherry Lawn? Like, the detail of that is so amazing. And Dave said one of the greatest things I've ever heard. He goes, you just put a little salt in the rice. You don't need to put too much salt in the rice, just a little. I love that. I try to think about that when I'm creating things. Because I tend to just dump salt on fucking... Like, I'm basically just a salt lick. And Mario has the same ability. It's about... And when I interviewed him last year, I literally was asking about just, like, one line, like, specific lines in lyrics. Because the little bit of salt in the rice is, like... He somehow fucking gets it right every time, and I'm kind of endlessly impressed by that because, you know, I myself am just a fucking sledgehammer. As I said to my wife several years ago, when I go for the Rolling Stones, I end up as the Boredoms. Like, or I wind up, like, in my mind, I'm going for the Rolling Stones, and I wind up as Pussy Galore. Like, and that is, like, every single time out. I cannot stop myself. So, I appreciate people who have I appreciate lyricists and melodic thinkers who have a deft hand. But to that, and I think I will touch now upon, just before we get into album talk, I will touch upon the phenomenon of the DuPage aesthetic and the DuPage concept. I'll be getting into this far more when we get into album talk. But I asked Mario about some of his current musical influences. One of the interesting things about him is that while there is some music that we both love a lot, like Iggy Pop and a lot of late 50s and early 60s rock and roll stuff, you know, he has a pool of influences that I'm either wholly unfamiliar with or it's just stuff that I never really got into. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting is he specifically cited early 2000s alt rock, and even though he was sort of making fun of it, the song Closing Time, which he called white boy soul music. And he's like, damn, I gotta write some more white boy soul music. And when you think about DuPage from that, like that plus the guitars, the serrated guitars, starts to make a lot of sense. But if you go the next level down from that, one layer deeper, Mario grew up with Nirvana. And as he put it, I love loud, quiet, loud. And I feel like loud, quiet, loud, if you think of it as in a visual sense, if you think about, you know, loud, quiet, loud, white, black, white, or white, blue, white, perhaps, you can think of it visually. You can think of it in a film editing style. Loud, quiet, loud, the Nirvana aesthetic. And as dirty as Nirvana was also in some ways extremely clean, and the extreme contrasts in Nirvana were part of their greatness and part of the brilliance and why that music just lives on and on and on. And to go one layer below that, and so you very much get that, especially in terms of Mario's subject matter, and then also the way that he uses his voice. He's not doing guitar feedback stuff the way Kurt would, or the more confrontational aspects, but those things come out more in the voice, the approach, the tempos, but also, again, the lyrics, the lyrical subject matter. But then you go another layer below that, and the thing that I very much appreciated, the thing that I was already seeing in the artwork, and then what you hear in the music, and this is something that I greatly, greatly appreciate, is that this music, and this is me saying this, there's no abstractions. It's clear, clean, straight lines. And I love that. I love when artists attempt to do that, because that is not easy to do. It is not easy to draw a straight line, especially when you can generate so many other ideas, right? And the ability to draw a straight line is incredible. I mean, I just reviewed the live piece in Toronto, 1969. That album cover art that's a straight line of an album cover. I love that. I love when artists are able to do that, and to bring these super clean, straightforward values into the actual songwriting and to actually pull it off. And, he talked about not being interested in being a music blog darling or appealing to that world or attempting to be impressive to them and jumping through those hoops and having to play the sort of the word salad games that you have to do with those people. And again, I feel like that is part of the non-pretentiousness. And also, if you are... Now, there is the immediate geographical resonance of the phrase right outside the city. But if you think of it, again, conceptually, that is also right outside the city, because what you would have in the city is that. You would have indie world and a lot of snobbery. And I, especially as I have aged, I have no interest in snobbery. If anything, I'm a snob about fucking snobs. It really, really irritates me. And kind of the only stuff I look back on in my life where I'm like really, really critical of myself is when I myself have been guilty of snobbery. I've been on a decade plus sort of a de-snobbing process. Because it was very easy to get snobby coming out of the 90s, let me tell you. Because I was pretty anti-snob in the 90s. And then I think I got snobbed up. And that's no way to live, people. That's no way to live. And you look at you look at that world, and you look at the what I call the shapeless people. And and you look at what's coming from that and what grows from that soil. I talked about that with the orchids. I talked about the orchids growing from the soil, and this clean, beautiful, earnest thing. That's what it's about. That's the direction. Go with the light. And so, I very much appreciate that, the right outside the cityness. It all ties together in a really, really beautiful way. And Mario talked about how this album could have been 15 songs, but they weren't as good. And as he put it, and I quote, "I like concise shit." It's a shame about this video then, huh? But again, that also makes sense. Again, strict editing, clean and precise, an emphasis on concision, an emphasis on earnestness, an emphasis on what is meaningful and what is beautiful and what is truthful. These are core things, and core things that you have to work out as you survive your own past, as you survive your own excesses, as you survive your worst instincts. And you work all these things out into your adulthood. It's part of the magic of adulthood and the gift of continued life. So, and these are things that I'm 48 and I'm still working on. I'm still putting together, but I try to get better every year. I really do. Mario also just talked about like waking up early and getting shit done. And there's something deeply satisfying about that. And you know who wrote a magnificent, clean, precise, perfect song about that? One of the first songs I ever remember loving as a child. You know who wrote a masterpiece about that? David Bowie, Modern Love. I don't want to go out. I want to stand. Get things done. David Bowie knew what's up. And what a magnificent, clean, precise, perfect song that is. But then, you can hear it as an early 80s MTV hit, but then you actually start reading the lyrics and you're like, wait, what is this about? What is he actually talking about? Wait, is this in favor of the Protestant work ethic? What is this? And you start untangling all those lyrics, and it doesn't lead to easy answers because all the depth is below the Nile Rodgers bright early Motown via the 80s sound. And it's one of the many ways in which that's perfect. And that is the DuPage aesthetic. The depth is all under the surface. And that, again, it requires a deft hand. And I was trying to think of other analogs like that, and the only other album that I could think of, it sonically is not like this at all, but this album is a little bit of a patchwork on its own. And again, some critics dismissed it in its time as lightweight, but my God, all the depth is under the surface, and you listen to it and you start hearing the depth. You listen to it 2, 3, 4 times, and all of a sudden it starts emerging, and you realize what a masterful, masterful album it is. And that is this, 1978 Comes a Time by Neil Young. Another beautiful, white, bright, clean album that seems on its surface to be very easy to read, and then is anything but, and is kind of nothing but depth. As much as it is beautiful, fun music that you can listen to at 11 o'clock in the morning, and genuinely enjoy in any number of contexts. So in its own weird way, there's a shared soul, I feel, with this majestic, highly, highly underrated total gem of an album. So I think that's pretty good for the beginning of this. And now we shall get into album talk. The album starts off with also the first single from DuPage, and that is Disco Days. And Disco Days is interesting because it immediately announces its intentions. It's kind of the perfect single, kind of the perfect lead-off track for DuPage. This was also the beginning of the first EP as well, which is still out there. You can still find the original iteration of it on Apple Music. Very, very clean, almost, I would say, like early Cars-esque, which also fits in with the single artwork, which if I want to throw that up, Rich, prompt. But it's one of the things that I love about Mario as a lyricist. And according to an interview from about somewhere around 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, Mario sometimes would write songs by just flipping through notebooks and taking different sections of different parts of writing from different notebooks. But that at some point really coalesced into its own really fascinating narrative style, where it transcends whatever cut and paste origins it has. And what it reminds me of, because I don't know that if this person, I don't think this person is a particularly big influence on Mario, but what it reminds me of is post Time Out of Mind Bob Dylan lyrics, and which is something that I actually struggled with for a couple years with him. Like, it took me a little while to work out. I feel like that business with Bob actually goes back to the mid-'80s. It really kind of weirdly starts around Empire Burlesque, really, and then goes forward. And it's this kind of mixing and matching, and especially on records like Love and Theft and The Tempest, one of my favorites. But with Bob's rapid-fire jumps in terms of tonal shifts, characters, character perspectives, first person jumping in and sort of commenting, and these devices are things that he has become really masterful at. Mara's kind of the only other lyric writer I know who I can think of who also does it to that degree. And that is also another part of the kind of the immediate depth of what you have with something that, on the one hand, is so straightforward. So I very much get the feeling like Disco Days sort of tells a couple different stories at once. There's the personal story of sort of where he's been and what he's been through. There's the obvious sort of relationship angle, but then there's also then different interpersonal relationships. There's a certain amount of kind of sly, subtle social commentary. It's a fascinating set of lyrics, but again, in these very simple, easy, legible kind of primary color structures. The guitars are absolutely perfect. This is Dave Trio, like, magnificent, and the whole thing just moves. It's sleek. It is mid-'60s Beatles in its sleekness, and Cars-esque in its compactness, and how all of the moving parts seamlessly fit together. And you have to have mechanisms and song structures that clean and precise to hold the really interesting wavering perspectives and contrasting perspectives of the lyrics, because that is then where all the depth and the heaviness is within the lyrics. And also just the way Mario has, and I'll talk about this more, but there is a really interesting flatness to his voice. Not that he sings flat, but there is a flatness sometimes to his voice that I think he uses to great effect to convey emotion in a not at all obvious way, where he isn't going, it's not go for broke power, it's not over the top emoting, it's a way of conveying emotion in kind of a more subtle way that you the listener can key into and read into, that he uses his voice almost more like it's like a cello or something, and he uses sort of the more sort of basso profundo to great effect. So magnificent, and again, just like, again, all the moving parts of it are just like sort of perfect. Like, it's basically like a perfect chorus. It's a perfect set of verses. It's a perfect intro. They're without being self-consciously arch or minimalistic or giving you a wink of, look how clever we are. There's never a wink to the camera. And I also think that that's part of what that also, in its own way, helps convey the depth of emotion that is being expressed. Because there is really, it would be very, very easy to throw in some like sort of clever stuff in here and to over-egg the pudding, or if you will, to put too much salt in the rice. And this is just enough. And the lyric details are vague enough to be compelling, but also give you the room to project into. So, and one of the other things I will say about Disco Days that I think is really interesting is it is the, this along with the song Happy Endings were two of the songs that Mario gave Mario the impression that the EP as it stood and DuPage as a concept, as a project, as a band itself was sort of unfinished business, because he believed so much and so strongly in the song. So I think that it is a great starting point. I think that, you know, when Mario spoke with me about looking at DuPage in terms of building a whole new discography, which I think is really cool and really exciting. And I think, you know, somebody in their early 30s, and I think it makes a lot of sense to start to move those muscles. I think for me, it happened more in the early part of my 40s. I was about a decade late, but I understand the mentality of it. And I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Now, there's a music video for Disco Days, which I will also be linking to. This was shot out in LA. It was shot by High 8 Girl. I don't know what her name is, but apparently it's her and her, as Mario put it, her dude. So I don't know what the relationship is there, but really, really like awesome faux retro, like you know, VHS quality, and it's, and the image, or the whatever, the aspect ratio is compressed. Like, it's, I love it. There's a couple channels of things like that now out on YouTube that I really, really enjoy. There's one that actually films local bands. I think it's, I don't know if it's on YouTube or Instagram, but it's World Renowned Failure. I'm a really big fan of that and that whole style. I mean, I shot a lot of stuff. I made a lot of movies back when that was not an aesthetic choice. That was all just simply all that you had before you. But I think it's done to great effect. And speaking of depth and sort of under the surface, so there's a model in it and Mario is lip syncing, and then the model is lip syncing, and they're sort of singing to each other. But I forget, it wasn't the first time I watched the video, it was maybe the second or third, that I realized the kind of the deft hand at play and part of the brilliance of the video. Because on one hand it works as a almost like sort of a self-conscious lost media video from the 90s. Like it totally could have been an alt-rock video from the 90s, and I lived through that period. So on one hand, you can totally view it that way, as like a riff on that, and that's like super cool. Specifically, really actually late 80s, early 90s is really what it would be. And so just as sort of a niche riff on an aesthetic, it works and is cool and fits in with the whole DuPage ethos, man. But what I love, and again, where the deft hand is at play, is when Mario is singing, that you realize that that is the girl's POV, and when she is singing, you realize that that is in fact his POV, and that they are looking at each other, but they are never in the same scene, and you never see her in his background, and you never see him in her background. I find that fascinating, and yet they are the same locations. I love that. That's fucking fantastic. That, then, is the perfect visual analog to the music that you're hearing. And also, it also kind of weirdly ties into another song on this album, which we'll get to in a moment. So, Disco Days, amazing opening statement, amazing statement of purpose, great way to start, great mission statement, if you will. The next song is The Pledge. And The Pledge is interesting because it's definitely the leaning more into the heavy rock, sludgier riffing. But again, it's super clean structures, and the Mario's like more sort of stentorian, declamatory tone is perfect. But also, again, details are absolutely magnificent. The details and the humorous touches, because that's one of the things that he's really, really good at, is throwing in things that are funny without the song becoming actually like comedic. There are certain songs he has that are hysterically funny, all the way through. Specifically the song She's So Hype, one of my absolute favorites. It is totally deranged and out there, and I should link to that. I really, really love how nuts that song is. But just the idea that in this otherwise imposing, serious song, there's the line, why don't we have Disney Plus? I love things like that, and I love when songwriters are able to fly things in like that. Again, like Dylan, these weird, like the moments where he puts in a knock-knock joke on Love and Theft. I absolutely love that. And then right back to serious stuff, you know? But The Pledge is interesting because it's, again, you can take it as a song about a romantic relationship, but you can also take it about interpersonal relationships. You can look at the title of The Pledge as, you can look at it as a song about betrayal. You can look at it as about detachment from what you're watching on the news. I mean, you can take the song on a lot of levels. However, I feel that the song is, you can take it also sort of as a anti-pretension song. You can take the song as something, speaking of Bob Dylan, as Mario's very own disease of conceit. You can certainly look at it from that angle. But it's also a COVID song. And for this, at the time, being a COVID band, this might be the best COVID song ever written. And the other thing is, I feel like the most emotionally static, charged line is that I never thought I'd dream about it. And I feel like that, in an interesting way, is sort of the key that unlocks a lot of the emotional core of what these songs are, because in a way it's about, again, living through your 20s, getting further into adulthood, getting further into reconciling your responsibilities and your instincts and your drives and your emotions and your intellect, and doing the very hard work of integrating all of these things. And I feel like it also points the way to songs, some of the stuff on Middle American, like Murder in the First Degree, and LA Woman, and some of those. Like, so I find it, again, it's a fascinating emotional tangle, but again, wrapped up in these really addictive, clean, precise musical structures that are, to use a phrase I love using, compulsively listenable. And then we get into the third song, One More Try. One More Try is far more of the power pop, or to put it in Chris Novoselic terms, The Pledge is more Paper Cuts-ish, and One More Try is more About a Girl-y. So, but again, just satisfying power pop chord changes, and if The Pledge is potentially about emotional betrayal, One More Try is potentially about reconciliation, but also the contradictions and the frustrations and the emotional honesty that one has to have if you are going to attempt any sort of reconciliation. The other thing that's interesting is the very lovely sort of 1966 harmonies, the sort of lightly quasi-psychedelic vocal harmonies, which is not something that Mario usually does, but works to absolutely great effect here. The other thing that I love about this is probably my favorite drumming that Siggy does in all of the DuPage recordings, in part because the way that he drives the verses is particularly good, but then there is a repeated fill that he does throughout the chorus that always feels one beat too much, but works perfectly, rhythmically speaking, in a rhythmic sense. And I noticed that detail maybe like the second or third time I ever heard the song, and I now listen for it actively every single time I listen. The other thing is, as far as Dave's guitars, one of the interesting things about DuPage, and we will see this in both Dave's recordings and then Dom's recordings, the guitar tones. They make really beautiful use of contrasting guitar tones for great effect, and Dave rips out an absolutely beautiful, again, compulsively listenable guitar solo. Absolute little corker, fucking absolute gem of a guitar solo that just drives everything along beautifully. And again, another like wonderful song that you want to listen to over and over again, because all of the component parts add up to a really, really beautiful whole. And, like it, using elements this simple, but where it all works, especially in a rock and roll context. And I've been referencing Bob Dylan a lot, but you know what else it reminds me of? You know what else, speaking of Bob Dylan? This album, yeah. Another gem of a record that seems simple, or perhaps simplistic, and then betrays lots and lots and lots of depth. It doesn't hit you over the head. It doesn't hit you over the head with depth. And next thing you know, one day you're listening to Never Say Goodbye and you're fucking tearing up, right? Because like, oh my God. And again, deafness, requiring a deft hand, sleight of hand. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then we get to the next song. We deviate slightly from the original track listing, which I should just also say is the original track listing is Disco Days, The Pledge, One More Try, e-break, and happy endings. But we are no longer dealing with the EP. This is the full album. So the next song is what I consider to be one of the true peaks of the album. And that is Ocean Shores, a song that Mario had originally posted on his YouTube channel as a demo in 2022. And it felt to me very much of a piece with some of the additional Middle American material, though very, very, very strong. And I love, so basically what you have as the original demo now, which I will now link to, actually really sounds like a demo, whereas before I never would have thought of it that way. Now it sounds totally incomplete compared to what they've done with it here. First of all, Mario recorded a new vocal and rewrote the lyrics, and I think rewrote the lyrics to great effect. And this is the first appearance of Dom's. This is Dominic Corso's premiere on the DuPage album. And the song begins with a great bass line, and then you just have the sort of these kind of introductory thoughts that are, general, a little self-serving, a little self-interested. And from there, again, from these simple elements, this is truly the lyrical masterpiece of the album. It's very Middle American period in a way, in that it has a fragmented narrative, and it's these dense clusters of words. It's probably the wordiest song, and that is like his wordiest album. And navigating these sort of much denser syllabic runs. Though the chorus is super melodic and absolutely gorgeous. What Dom does guitar-wise, as Mario put it, I complimented Dom's playing on this, and Mario just said, yeah, he murdered it, and he does. Though not in an obvious, when you think he murdered it, like in an incredibly tasteful way that is ridiculously well-suited for the song. Dom adds these absolutely beautiful and emotionally resonant surf rock, surf guitar interludes that are just completely perfect. And even the way that it's mixed, like where the first guitar that comes in is like all the way, I think, on the right, like very sort of quiet and understated, and it just fantastic. Like and so Mario had said that he didn't really feel like he when I brought the song up, he goes, oh yeah, the California song. And he started to almost kind of say that he maybe this song didn't thematically fit. And I jumped in and said, it does fit, and here's why. And I remember years and years ago reading maybe it was in Mojo or Uncut or Q Magazine, and it was the best British music ever made. It was some list of, number 3 or 4 on the list was the Rolling Stones. And I remember the entry, the couple paragraphs about the Rolling Stones was, yes, the Rolling Stones always wanted to be American and always wished that they were American. What's more British than that? And along those lines, what is more right outside the city? What is more Midwest than dreaming about California, dreaming about some idealized state of what California is? And Mario loved that and jumped on it with an added detail that I wouldn't have thought of, but is fucking perfect, which is, he goes, and the only frame of reference that people from this part of the world have is vacationing in Florida. Don't even make it out to California. You go down to Florida and then imagine what California on the other side, like what the Florida on the other side of the country must look like. And that is true because my family, we only went down to Florida. Hilarious, but so perfect. And that is true. And it is this weird, idealized, non-real version of California and what Venice Beach must be like. And but Mario takes it to some other stage, and the song is not just about a relationship that's in a weird state of crisis, Mario takes it to a whole other place, which is absolutely brilliant. So he contrasts these images of hyper-sexualized, overly hyper-real ideas of this hot girl and the hot times that they're going to have together in the hottest state with being homeless. And then he winds up homeless. And the chorus of the song, when you hear it, at first it sounds like, I don't know, like a, is it red pill guy, like I'm a man, I don't have to think, therefore I am, which is a great fucking one-liner. I don't have to think, therefore I am. It's like, I salute you, sir. That is magnificent. And like, damn, I don't even have a plan. And yet he winds up homeless. So it starts off as like, I don't think, therefore I am. Becomes like 2 lines later, he's fucking homeless and getting hassled by the cops. Hilarious, amazing. And to weave all of that together seamlessly and to just constantly be jumping back and forth. And then to have this great, chorus. Just fucking fantastic. And then the surf rock guitar then starts to feel not just emotionally comforting, but then also ironic asides, and it somehow serves in both functions. Ocean Shores is a true high point. If you aren't going to start with Disco Days, start with Ocean Shores. It is an absolute gem of a song and manages to weave in a whole hell of a lot of complexity into its 3.5 minutes. Amazing. Then side 1, and kind of the original round of recordings comes to its end with E-Break. And E-Break is what's interesting is you have these songs, some of which are a little lighter in tone or emotionally lighter, and then you have the palmier depths that emerge. And E-Break is interesting then as a side closer, because it ties together some of the strands that have been present on the first half of the record. It's a song about aging. It's a song about getting into your 30s. It's a song about looking at your friends, looking at their lives, what becomes of people, the things that happen when people outlive their own youth and outlive the vague I'm gonna, or the possibilities of youth, and actually start getting down to what you actually and really are, and you really have to answer those questions. These are not easy things, and this song grapples with it in a surprisingly emotionally mature way, a very honest way, and recognizing that some bridges are too screwed up to cross. And again, the realizations and the dealing with that. Mario's voice is again used to great effect. When I talked about the flatness of the voice, you could also say the grain of the voice. There is a quality in certain singers. John Lennon absolutely had it. Hank Williams had it. Mario has it, where the grain of the voice, or the flatness of the voice, and again, I don't mean singing flat. I mean that it carries so much emotion that it becomes hard to convey via just actual singing, or again, like a more explosive Wilson Pickett or James Brown approach. Lou Reed obviously had that, and because sometimes Lou Reed was deadpan, but I don't think it's that Lou Reed was deadpan. I think it's that there's so much being conveyed that, again, there's an interesting flatness to it, and then what you marvel at is the grain of the voice. And there are so many conflicted emotions within the sentiments of trying to reach out to somebody, again, be reconciliatory in nature, and understanding that that person can't or won't be able to, or maybe isn't emotionally mature enough, and realizing that you are now in different points of your life. And there's that, but then there's also, again, what they do with Mario's voice, which is, I absolutely love it. It is heavily multi-tracked in sections, self-harmonizing, and it sounds almost like Gregorian chant. So again, talk about like flatness to convey a larger idea. Fantastic. Like it does. It sounds like Gregorian monks, and I absolutely love that. It's damn near Middle Eastern, not Middle Eastern, Middle Ages. Wrong middle. Amazing, amazing, and again subtle. It doesn't super duper call attention to itself. It's just another fascinating element just woven in seamlessly. It's used the same way that Dave's guitar tone is used for the solo on One More Try. It's just another fascinating aspect that I absolutely love. An amazing, amazing song following up on another amazing song on what winds up being a pretty seamless side of music, and a fantastic album side. And with that, we flip the record over. Side 2 opens with Zoomers, another older song that was originally went up in 2022, though credited to DuPage. So, excuse me, it was from the unfinished second batch of material. Zoomers is kind of a ongoing fascination with Mario as far as lyrical, as far as subject matter goes. And apparently, according to our interview from last year, an unfinished second film of his was also called Zoomers. I know Mario favors happy endings, but on an album that is just, melodies, truly like melodies for days, Zoomers might be the best. An absolutely beautiful, sparkling acoustic ballad that is just absolutely gorgeous. And again, the Mario using his voice to spectacular effect in long drawn out notes in the lead up to the chorus, absolutely phenomenal. Light and shade. And there is something, he makes it emotionally resonant just simply through the sound of his voice. Again, there is something about the emotional core of how he sings that I've talked before about this. I haven't talked about this in a while, but the phenomenon of harmonics, and that there are, and David Lynch has talked about this. It's not that, I'm certainly not the first person to talk about this, but I think we're familiar with the concept of musical harmonics, but I also feel like there are whatever you would want to call emotional harmonics. I think that there are different kinds of harmonics where you start hearing or taking in, it doesn't have to just be in music, it can be in film, it could be in paintings, it could be literature, of course, sculpture, whatever, that you start getting more than what's there. You get that just through Robert Johnson's guitar playing, right? And there's something about the way Mario sings the chorus that, and also I think that if one of the ideas about this record is living longer than your youth and really, really landing in adulthood, and the reflection and retrospection involved in that, I feel like the chorus lyrically can apply to kind of anybody, and especially if you have lived the lifestyle, for lack of a better way of putting it, of a rebel. It's the rebel who doesn't stay stuck in trying to constantly recreate the poses of their younger selves or of their youth. There's a lot to that. And really, what does that look like? And I think there's an inevitable amount of reflection in that. And the chorus is that. I mean, the rest of the song is absolutely beautiful. And, it's the Mario's ability to sort of intone and drone with his voice, it is, again, it's not for nothing that I say that. It is like a cello. It is a wonderful instrument. So that is Zoomers, and then we get into the next song, and this is where we're now fully into the realm of DuPage Mark II with Dom and his sensibilities, recorded in the Sonic Muse basement studios. And Mario is a noted cinephile, and there is a really interesting subgenre of his writing where he basically, what would the word be, limbs the outline of a film and turns that into absolutely beautiful subject matter. So the next song is White Pony, which is lyrically based off of the wonderful film Drugstore Cowboy, an old high school favorite of mine. And but this is in a series of phenomenal movie-based songs that Mario has written. The incredible Orwell's epic, their magnum opus double feature, which I was lucky enough to see them perform last year, which had Mario and Dom perform this incredible extended screaming competition coda with just, I mean, it was the full throttle intensity of it was absolutely amazing. Holy shit, was it fucking awesome. But double feature, I mean, that might be truly the crowning achievement of that band, and the full flowering of a lot of their ambitions. But is based on the horror film It Follows. And then you have the great song from the self-titled album, The Boxer, which is based from the film Bleed for this. But Mario, again, doesn't do it like in an obvious Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson-y type way, sort of way. I mean, these are some of his most fascinating lyrics. Like, the lyrics to Double Feature are amazing. Like, that in and of itself, like, you could base an entirely different film off of the lyrics to Double Feature. Like, you could take that and extrapolate it into something else completely. The details, the depth of details in the lyrics to The Boxer, amazing. But then, an absolute classic of his, the title track from his third album, The Party, is based on this, one of my favorite movies ever made. Yes, The Brown Bunny, which, again, I talk about this in the 2025 interview, which you should watch, which you can watch at Arc Plus. It's everything you love about Arc Technologies, plus more. So, but The Brown Bunny, I saw this in theaters. I absolutely love this movie. I've talked about this before. I'm a big Vincent Gallo fan. The Party is based on The Brown Bunny. And if you want to hear, like, truly, like, how to adapt a movie into lyrics for a song, The Brown Bunny might be the single greatest example of that ever. Like, the Party, to take the movie into that as a song, you would never know necessarily that those two things have anything to do with each other. And yet they do. So anyway, White Pony is a spasmodic piece of rock and roll. It really captures the vibe of the movie. It truly captures it in sound. And, you know, Dom's guitars are great. I mean, this is like full throttle rock and roll. But what's interesting is the command of loud, quiet, loud. Again, back to these immaculate songwriting aesthetics. And again, seeing all the parts, you know, the idea that these songs really are comprised out of circles, squares, triangles, and the combinations of those are used to such great effect. And I absolutely love it. And so White Pony is this loud, quiet, loud, magnificent fucking boffo rock and roll performance. And what's interesting is, because Dom is an interesting musical thinker and a self-contained songwriter, again, in his own right, and he wrote two of the best songs on the Friendly Fire album. He wrote USA and Caroline, but USA is just phenomenal. Lyrically, USA I thought was Mario. The density of the storytelling and the kind of elliptical, always just out of reach, but yet having these great details. That's Dom. And so anyway, that's a testament to him as a writer. But he tying it all together and tying it back to Dave Trio and tying it back to the ethos and the concept of DuPage is he throws in again this beautiful 1966 British invasion guitar tonalities, like just as things are starting to get psychedelic. It's such a specific frame of reference, and he manages to absolutely nail it. It makes all the sense in the world. And again, what an interesting contrast in the headlong intensity of the 90s alt-rockness of it. Obviously, Mario has the voice for this. This is a natural use, natural extension of the instrument. And then the lyrics. I mean, these lyrics are fucking fantastic. This is a device that he really excels at. He's outstanding at doing that. It is just a great, powerful, dark, captivating rock and roll performance. And again, you have this light and shade, and you have light and shade. It's not just that there's lighter songs and darker songs. Like with Zoomers, you have the darker elements of Mario's voice and what some of the lyrics sort of allude to. And then you have the lighter moments in White Pony of the guitar breaks. Like, love it. It's not just as simple as like, oh, there's some more intense songs or something. And it all, as the great Perry Farrell put it, the shadows and the light are one. It's beautiful. And then we get kind of to the core of the whole album. The emotional core of the whole album is sort of exposed across two songs, and kind of weirdly ties a lot of things together. So the next song that we have is Chicagoland. And Chicagoland is an interesting one because it's sort of I don't know if Kanye West was attempting to write like Ray Davies. I don't know. It is, first of all, Mario's voice, fantastic on it. Great vocals on it. But it's, how do I put this? The mix of optimism and paranoia, the concept of, I don't know what this song would mean to somebody who's not from around here. The idea that, I mean, I don't know, maybe a lot of people are like this, and according to the Kinks of the Village Green Preservation Society, apparently a large swath of England is like this, but I feel like it's always really specific to here and specific to certain pockets, certain segments of the population from around here. But I gotta say this idea, the want it back to back like the good years, this constant the good years. It's always this illusion of the past. And there are so many like Facebook groups and like Instagram accounts, Instagram groups of old Chicagoland and what it was like. They were talking about what it was like fucking in the 80s. There's always been some imagined point. And it's interesting for me now to see, like, I worked with a younger millennial for several years. And for her, it was like, this imagined point of perfection was like 2005 or 2006. Like, how is that possible? You know what I mean? She would rhapsodize about the early 2010s. That's the point for me by which everything had gone off the fucking cliff. Like, there was nothing left. There was nothing even left to salvage, and that was her golden era. That was her, like, that was the peak for her. Like it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating how these different points in times, and this song manages to capture that with ridiculously specific references that are also not really like, and they're somehow specific and ethereal at the same time. And interestingly, Dom's music conveys that, where it feels like the song is both a ballad and rushing ahead of itself. And there's the point where everything just drops out and is just a harmonium. Again, this sort of interesting, lightly psychedelic British invasion period. It feels almost like Yardbird's Roger the Engineer or something. Like it's so specific. Or maybe even aspects of like the Byrds' 5D or Fifth Dimension album. Like, it's just so interesting. And and also I'm much older than Mario is, and so when I had a Game Boy, it was long before there were clear ones. And yet I somehow know exactly what the hell he's talking about. It's fascinating, and it's also paranoid, and also so like hyper realistic, and categorizing it as the land of heart disease. How perfect is that? What a brilliant song. What a brilliant encapsulation. What a 21st century version of the Kings of the Village Green Preservation Society. It's wistful and scornful, and then it somehow ends via Dom's and Siggy's drumming. It somehow ends on a sort of hopeful note. What an odd song. What a strange, beautiful, tangled song that is also just melodically beautiful, and that you could listen to and just enjoy and maybe laugh at appreciatively, not because it's a ho 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 funny, but just have a good-natured chuckle at, or be like, yeah, wow, man. Like, I love that. I love that it is just ambiguities, and the light and shadows are all one. And it's the one point of like just the idea that there are moments of like true optimism in Mario's voice. I love it. I love it. These ever-shifting contrasts. It is, again, very Tempest period Bob Dylan, very modern times, and very Love and Theft, and very Time Out of Mind Bob Dylan as well. Magnificent. I asked if, since Ocean Shores and Zoomers were used for this, Mario was very eager to make a DuPage 2 record, which I am super excited about. I asked for those of you who are watching this who are hardcore fans, I asked if All the Way Home could potentially be a DuPage song, and he said, I get why you would ask that, or that the possibility of that, but he is too interested in writing new material, which I think makes all the sense in the world, and obviously I would actively encourage. But I will also link to the song All the Way Home, though, because that could be sort of like the missing DuPage song, because if you like these, All the Way Home is stunning. Like, oh my god, it's a gorgeous song. I wanted to just throw that in somewhere. So here's the place to do it. And then we get to the title track, and it's the title track for a reason. This is another masterpiece. Right Outside the City. There's a demo for it, a brief little demo on Mario's YouTube channel. I had asked if it was something of a reflection 10 years later on the Orwell song Black Francis, the great Orwell song. And again, Mario said no. He flatly said no, but did sort of add, it's interesting that you would think that. And he did say it's definitely a reflection, a 10 years later reflection. Right Outside the City is, that as a melody is an absolute heartbreaker. This is the realization of the concept of the white boy soul music. This is soulful. This is using the flatness of the grain of the voice to convey great emotion without going into histrionics or full-throated screaming or freak out. This is the controlled use of the instrument in a really beautiful, emotionally honest, and honestly communicative way. It's a fantastic vocal married to an absolutely beautiful, like truly, truly beautiful melody that is also, there's a lot of sadness in there. There's a lot of white boy soul music. What is white boy soul music? That would be, it's a form of angst, right? It's impacted feelings where there are too many feelings to let out all in one place. So it comes out in side angles. It comes from weird angles. It doesn't just belt out at once. It doesn't just belt out like Wilson Pickett singing "I Found a Love." You know, it comes out in fragments, right? That's what this is. And that's also part of the ever-shifting narratives and the ever-shifting perspectives. It doesn't just all come out at once. So Right Outside the City is a masterful piece of writing, and a truly, like, while leaving things elliptical, getting into the core of some of the most difficult things that you have to do in life. Again, outliving your youth, and reconciling all your instincts and putting your intellect and your emotions in the same place and having to balance those things and not just going all the way in on, fuck it, I'm going to kick everything over, or I'm going to stay up for 2 or 3 days straight and be totally mad. And understanding that, no, you have to use your brain tomorrow. And again, reconciling all of that. What do you do with yourself when you are wired a certain way and you don't fit? You don't fit. And on Mario's case, and I get this, is, you know, and I mean this, that again, Right Outside the City, it's not condescending towards people. It doesn't condescend to the audience. It doesn't pander to anything. And at the same time, he is a populist, a true populist. At a time when populism it seems like an abstract concept. Again, what is the most difficult thing in a lot of ways is drawing the straight line. Being the populist, being, you know, I'm not saying that he's this. I don't want to project too much, but whatever you call, and I don't mean to make it political commentary, but small c Catholic, classical liberal, again, populist, the straight line, allowing for contradictions, having something where everyone is welcome, accepting people for what and who they are, on their own terms. What are the goals of this channel? Is to accept the art on its own terms. These are not easy things. These are not easy things in today's world, where you are rewarded for taking it all the way in the opposite direction. And I feel like this song wrestles with all of that, but I feel like it's also deeply personal. For him, it feels deeply personal, but it can feel deeply personal for you simply because the intensity and the beauty of the melody and the way in which he sings it. On top of that, you have the beautiful answer phrases from Dom's guitar. This is beautiful, emotionally resonant music. It's mid-tempo, so it's not like it's a ballad or anything, but it sort of keeps you, it's buoyant enough and keeps you afloat enough that it doesn't become despairing, and there's a bittersweet quality. The thing is, right, especially this record, there's stuff on here that is dark. I find the title track almost unbearable in its sadness. It is dark. And I feel like he had already sort of stepped aside or moved out or away from just sort of purely dealing in darkness or justifying dealing in darkness because that's what you do or that's how I feel most of the time or whatever. And again, I understand why he's going to the light. And we'll take a second and we'll talk about the artwork. You know, I think that, again, throw the artwork up, Rich, prompt. The artwork was done by Will Kern of Kern House, and this is what the music sounds like. Again, the font for DuPage, the dollar, the money, U.S. currency font, I forget the name of it. Perfect choice. And I feel like the other artwork, you know, the tiles for the happy ending single, like it's clean, precise, immaculate, but also bright. But also then there's dingier little details, like the dinginess of the actual, where the album title is placed. And it balances, it is a perfect balance of the elements and the aesthetics of DuPage. I absolutely love it. He did an absolutely phenomenal job, and it is the perfect visual analog. So, right outside the city is, you know, there comes a point. I mean, who sticks around to be hanging out in the last gang in town, you know, and who sticks around the longest, you know, and why, and what does that look like the longer they stick around? These things are really, really interesting, and, you know, and something that, you know, everybody has to grapple with in one version of it or another, one form of it or another. So, you know, I mean, I'm further down the road on these with these things, because I mean, I'm looking ahead to the next, like I'm looking ahead even more from that. Then I'm looking ahead at the next phase of my life, you know. But don't worry, I'll still keep making videos just for you, So anyway, so that's the title track. It's magnificent. I really, really, really love the title track. And then we get what I think is one of Mario's favorites. We get Happy Endings, ported over from the original EP. Obviously, Happy Endings isn't going to be the end of side one. That's silly. That's just ridiculous. So, Happy Endings, great drumming from Siggy, great backbeat, and again, beautiful acoustic guitars, and just simple, compact, direct beauty. I made a reference in the Orchids video to REM's Find the River. This is analogous to Find the River. It's beautiful, but it's not self-consciously epic. It doesn't go for big movements or grandiose expressions of emotions. It's simple and all the more perfect, all the more approachable. And it is just a compact, beautiful, optimistic song, but not optimistic, but not unrealistic. And that is the balance. That is the light and the shade. And we don't go, I mean, but also talk about really being an adult, living as, not even coming into adulthood, but being an adult, living and functioning and walking around in the world and navigating this world. Lately, we don't walk around pretending. All we want are happy endings, you know? Well, we want our happy endings. We're trying to make, like, yeah, you know? It's perfect. It's perfectly articulated. It's perfectly articulated. And then beautiful, I'm assuming that's like a synth strings solo. I'm assuming that, I guess that would be Dave. I don't know. That might be Siggy. I don't know. I forgot to ask. Sorry. But that's beautiful. And another, again, unexpected musical touch, like the harmonium, like some of Dom's guitar tones, like some of the stuff earlier on, like just the use of the acoustic guitars. That's also part of the magic. You don't put too much salt in the rice, just enough. It's magnificent. And it ends the album on a beautiful, I don't want to say quietly majestic, but approachably majestic, realistically majestic note. Majestic in a way of taking your best girl out on for a date night, You know, going to a really, you know, maybe not going to the 5-star, but, you know, going to the best pizza place, going and getting some really, really good sushi, some really, really good pho, going to like that really like fucking awesome ramen place, you know, that you always see the same people in, but maybe isn't getting written up or gonna get a Michelin star, you know. That's what happy endings is. Going out with your best girl for ramen. Having a date night. Friday night, you know? Love it. So what's next for DuPage? I asked Mario if they would be playing live, and he seemed to think that yeah, they will be. I certainly was encouraging of that and would love to see that happen. I think that would be great. Mario is having seen him perform twice now, once solo with Monday as his backing band, and then with the Orwells last year. He's a born performer, and I was duly impressed both times. And then I asked if there were plans for a physical release, because he does work with the Sonic Muse label, and hopefully there will be. I would, you know, if you like this video, you know, go hit up the Sonic Muse on Instagram, and I'll link to the Sonic Muse YouTube channel as well. You can check out some of the live sessions that they've done in the Sonic Muse basement studio, world headquarters basement studios. But the other thing that is, so I would love to see physical copies. That would be amazing. I would love that. So I really think that should happen. So you, the viewer, can help make that happen. So, you know, go bother the Sonic Muse, damn it, and demand, write in on your letterhead and say, I want to have my hands on the wheel of the truck. Though in this case, the wheel of the truck would be a vinyl record or a CD or maybe even cassettes. But let's stick with CDs and vinyl records for now. I don't get the cassette thing. Cassettes fucking sucked. I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, but the other thing that Mario is doing, speaking of the Sonic Muse, they are making a movie, and it's pretty cool. Title currently redacted. But with the great Jay Corrales, who made this. This is the film Mass State Lottery. And if you're unfamiliar with the film Mass State Lottery, I will put a link to it so you can watch it digitally. It is, I don't know if there are any Blu-rays left. They had done a run, but I think those are completely sold out. But I'll put a link so you can watch it. It's a phenomenal film. It is a true film for the 21st century, and Mario has a cameo in it, so you can see that as well. But they are making a movie together. I absolutely love this. This is what I was hoping to see years ago. This is what I was talking a little bit about in the Orchids video. It's amazing to see people making it happen, and making it happen completely outside the realm of whatever world that hasn't produced fucking anything interesting in 40 years. So excuse me. So anyway, I think that just about wraps things up here. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I will be back in a couple weeks with another exciting video. I've got a bunch of stuff planned. I'm going to be later into the summer. I'm going to be doing a really, really fun two-parter that I actually spoiled already on my appearance on the Black Spinner Circle podcast, which you should watch. But yeah, I've got a lot of ideas. I've got one humdinger that I can't wait to do, but it's in the fall. It was either going to be the fall or the winter, and I missed the window for it this winter, so it's now going to have to wait till like October, November. But god damn it, it's going to be worth it. I'm really excited for that one. But we also, like I said, we have a very exciting two-parter coming this summer. So yeah, but I want to do like maybe 2 or 3 more before I get to that. So is that one's going to be pretty ambitious, but a lot of fun, a lot of fun. So anyway, like I said, that about wraps things up here. I hope that you have enjoyed all of this. Thank you for watching. Go check out DuPage. Go check out the Sonic Muse. Go check out Mass State Lottery. Go check out the Orchids. It's worth it. It is all fucking great art, and it's happening right now in real time, and that's a beautiful thing and very exciting. So please like and subscribe and comment and all of the other YouTube things. Share if you feel so inclined. That's apparently very good for the good old algorithms that we that run our lives now for some stupid reason. And otherwise, like I said, I will be back in a few weeks with another exciting video. So until then, everybody, until next time, I'll see you all then. Bye!